Okay, hi everyone. Well, welcome to this session. We have a fabulous panel here. I just want to say a few words before we get into the session. We do have Slido available today as well, so we'll have a good chunk of time for Q&A later on. Just briefly introduce myself. I am Dan. I'm the Chief Scientific Advisor for National Security, and it is my pleasure to chair this session and have a chat with these wonderful people here. Research is really, really important for cybersecurity. We all know that. Cybersecurity today is no longer just about keeping pace with change. It's about outpacing our adversaries who are constantly adapting, automating, and scaling their capabilities. So it's so important that we scale our own capabilities and change effectively and responsibly. And that starting point is with science and research. Research isn't just a nice to have alongside operational cyber defense, it's foundational to our strategic advantage. Our adversaries experiment relentlessly. They probe systems, they learn from failure and rapidly operationalize their work. To stay ahead, we must do the same, grounding our tools, our techniques, and our decisions in rigorous research and evidence. Cybersecurity gives us something incredibly powerful, the ability to identify effective interventions faster. Through advanced analytics, behavioral modeling, and applied data science, cyber research enables us to detect threats earlier, understand them more deeply, and act with greater precision. And that matters on two levels, at a scale, so across a much more broad infrastructures, and at depth for the systems that are most critical to our national, our economic, and our organizational resilience. But we cannot and should not do this alone. We cannot scale this capability alone. The complexity of modern networks, the volume of data, and the pace of innovation demands that we embrace external partnerships. Universities, research labs, startups, industry leaders, and international collaborations each bring their own perspectives and capabilities that no single organization can replicate. So today's panel is more than just about technology. It's about how we build a research ecosystem that enables scale, that it drives innovation and turns insight into operational impact. I'm really looking forward to exploring this with our great panel on how we can strengthen those partnerships, how we can bridge the gap between research and deployment, and ensure our cyber capabilities remain resilient, adaptive, and ahead of the threat. So I'm delighted to introduce our panel. I'll just go along the line here. We have Professor Dame Muffy Calder, who's a professor of formal methods at the University of Glasgow. She was a former chief scientific advisor in Scotland, and her work focuses on mathematical methods for complex systems. We have Professor Adam Joinson, professor of info systems at the University of Bath. Adam's research is interdisciplinary on the interactions between human behaviors and technology. We have Dr. Kathryn Magnay, who's the Programme Director for National Security and Defence at EPSRC at UKRI. And Kathryn leads that cross-UKRI investment in research to address national security and defence priorities. And last but not least, we have Professor Shahid Raza, who is a professor and chair of cybersecurity at the University of Glasgow. Shahid is a director of research in computer science and a leading expert in IoT security. So please welcome our great panel. Okay, welcome everybody. So Muffy, I want to start with you, if that's okay. You recently wrote an article for the Financial Times about how the UK needs a Bletchley 2.0, which is a brilliant article. If you haven't read it, please do read it. Can you tell us a bit about what's in the article and why you wrote it? What were you getting at with it?
Right. Thank you very much. Is this on?
Yeah.
Yes, great. Right. I don't need to tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Cyber threats are here now, and they're growing. In particular, they're focusing on major businesses and institutions in the country. So I wanted to respond to that. And just for a little context, I'm sure you've heard these figures many times over the last 2 days, but the attack on Marks and Spencer's was estimated to cost £100 million, and the one on JLR was £200 million in extra costs, and up to £2 billion costs overall affecting the entire country. So these have huge impacts on us. Not only can we not go about our daily lives, etc., and get your school uniforms from M&S, seriously, a colleague of mine still waiting for this, it actually costs us money. It impacts our economy. This is a national threat. And myself and other colleagues think this requires a national response. And that's why I wrote the article. And the reason it's called Bletchley 2.0 is because this is a national threat, and we've been here before. We've had a big national threat in 1939, and the national response was Bletchley. So I want to go back to that and think, well, what's different now? And focus on three aspects. The first is we actually have the NCSC. Thank goodness, right? So we are starting from a very strong position. So we have NCSC. The second point, though, we have a much more complex problem to tackle. These are not just socio-technical problems. I'm sure you will touch on the socio-technical. They also have economic and financial implications. And there's this whole concept of, shall we say, technical deficit. Who pays to do what we need to do? The third, though, is a very positive one. There's a much larger and more diverse set of people who can help. If you think back to Bletchley, 1939, there were a lot of crypto guys. The emphasis is on the word guys. I believe there was one, maybe two women. I won't labor that point, but you know what I'm saying. So, what are we going to do to respond to this national threat? What could we do? Well, I think we need to do work on both operation and research. The focus of this panel is research, so I'm just going to confine my comments to research. And basically, I want to put forward a 6-point manifesto, which I'm going to read from my notes so I don't forget any of the points. The first one is, I propose we need stronger communication of the research and impact challenges to academia in both classified and unclassified forms. Academia is desperate to make a contribution, but we need to know what the problems are. And as I said, they don't always need to be in classified form. So stronger communication about the challenges that are before us. Number two, an increased focus of UK cyber research on impact linked to national need. And again, that reflects a bit, do we know what problems are needed for work? Number three, give UK academia an information edge through secure sharing platforms. So academia needs to have the data and the information to do the work. Number four, grow world-leading academic capability and recognize it through mechanisms that might be other than the traditional publication and academic status. Let's be creative about this. We already have impact within REF, which I do think is excellent. Maybe there are other mechanisms to actually recognize academic contributions. Number five, related to that, increased national capacity and responsibility within academia to support the cyber defence of the UK, particularly during crisis times. And last, but not least, and ever so important, increased industry partnerships, investment and spin-outs. So there's my 6 points for discussion.
Excellent. That started us off really well, some good provocations there. Thank you very much, Muffy. Adam, you know, there's 6 points there. Muffy said before as well that sort of, so not all just about socio-technological sides as well. What resonates with you from what Muffy was saying?
I think actually it's the sense of urgency. now.
Right.
That's the thing that really resonates from Muffy's manifesto, is that we've been talking about the importance of cyber for so long. We've been talking about the need to have closer collaboration with industry, to have better communication of what the problems are. But I think what's really clear now is that there's a real sense of urgency that we do need to do it, whatever format that might be, whether it's a country house in the Cotswolds, or a program of research in UKRI, or closer some kind of format that brings together security and researchers. That sense of urgency, I think, is what really resonates.
Yeah, yeah. I feel I can say this because I'm an academic as well. We're not known for our sense of urgency sometimes.
No.
We take years and years sometimes to do something. We haven't got years for this. How are we going to have to change and adapt?
Oh gosh, I think partly it's about incentives, as Muffy mentioned. Some of the ways that academics are, and the research that we do is kind of funded, is evaluated, is incentivized within universities needs to change, which is around impact and use, and actually getting technology out and adopted. I think also we need to be more collaborative. We need to be more collaborative with industry and with government, and we need to see new structures that allow us to actually work together.
Well, thanks, Adam. Kathryn, from your perspective, the manifesto, what do you think?
So I was just going to build on some of those points then, actually. And I think for me, one of the key things here has been, and we see it a lot from our role, going out, we speak to all the universities, particularly working in these areas, for me, engineering, physical sciences based. And universities feeling very, very reluctant to even talk about the work they're doing across the security and defence space because of the reactions we've had. And last year, EPSC, the UKRI was led by EPSC, did publish a statement, a position statement on the website to try and encourage universities to actually, be more open about this, the need for actually research across portfolios to be turned to this agenda. And I think the other bit that is key for me, and let's face it, we let's put our hand up and say we're part of this as well. Agility, flexibility, responsiveness. How do we all turn more quickly and move more rapidly and ducking and diving, weaving in and out of these challenges and make sure we've got the right expertise at the right place at the right time. Let's face it, UKI, we need to put our hands up here and say actually some of that is on us, and we need to get a bit slicker about all this too.
Well, thanks, Kathryn. Shahid, what resonates there from the manifesto?
I cannot agree.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I cannot agree more. Indeed, the 24th of February 2022 has changed everything, for Europe. It's a day when Russia attacks Ukraine. And yes, if you go back 5 years, it's a very sensitive agenda, to work with. I came from Sweden 2 years ago. We were 200 years neutral partners, never participated in First World War, Second World War, but you ended up joining NATO now, just because the urgency is there. Yeah. We need to act. So I'll come back to some of the specific points later on, but I totally agree that we cannot say in universities that you stay at the margin of this. You have to jump into this.
Yeah.
How? That we can discuss a bit more later.
Brill. Okay, thanks, Shahid. I just want to pick up on one of the points, Shahid, that Muffy made before in her manifesto, which I think was number 4. Recognise academic contribution, so grow that world-leading academic capability and recognise the contribution, not necessarily through the normal channels. As an academic, what other channels do you think we could do? How should we be rewarding and recognise people who could actually move a bit faster than they're moving now?
Yeah, so today people confuse a few things like defense, security, militarization, and resilience as like one thing interchangeably in different contexts. So most of the technologies that we need in defense now are also civilian technologies. Look at AI, look at cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, misinformation, disinformation. These are fundamentally civilian technologies. And we need cybersecurity, if you stick to cyber and defense, it's a topic that has a very blurred line between cybersecurity and cyber defense. You know, what works for, I mean, we hear dual use in material science as well, but that's a bit loose link maybe. But here, it's a direct link. You know, what you build a robust, secure AI system would work very well for defense and for civilian first. So, yeah, do we really need to change our processes and align ourselves with defense? It's a questionable. I mean, universities are places for independent research and you know, independent thinking, and we have a duty towards public as well, and we educate public as well, and we have to. I mean, I agree completely that, you know, we should do defense research. There's no question about this. The question is rather, how should we do it in a way that's more responsible, that's more transparent, and that fits within the university's context and their broader, you know, duties. They are not strategically aligned defense partners. You know, they are there for independence. There are other organizations that could actively, you know, link themselves as defense organization and partners. But, you know, we can come back to this later on as well. But it's a bit delicate, you know, in this context where we are right now, where things are. I mean, there was a survey by student survey in Glasgow. 89% students said we should de-invest rather than invest in cyber. So we need to stay, you know, within the limits we have towards our public and the trust towards the public on openness. At the same time, as I said, you know, things have changed since 2020. It's not business as usual. So universities must contribute towards defense research as well.
Cool. Yeah, Kathryn, do you want to go in?
And I think one of the things that's key from, again, talking to communities across the whole of UKRI's remit, there is not, and it goes back to, I think, was it your point number one, Muffy? There isn't an understanding of what the challenges are, and there's not an understanding of actually what are the issues that my research can address. People absolutely have a perception in mind that is not true, not accurate, and that to me is a real piece that we do need to work on, is that education, understanding, sharing much more what the challenges are, so that people can say, okay, I do see that my research, how it contributes, or actually how I need some security understanding in the piece of work that I'm doing.
Cool. Muffy, do you want to go in?
Thanks. Can I just keep coming back to the research questions and challenges? For me, that's the thing that's my guiding concept. Why are we in this position? Why do we keep building systems that have these vulnerabilities? That's what I would keep asking. Why do we build the systems that have them, or the way that we use them, or come on, in future, it's not going to just be people, it's also going to be agentic interactions. So even if Mythos found all the vulnerabilities and we could keep solving it, I would still ask the question, why did we build that system that way? Why did we build that architecture? There are so many research questions embedded here. But it's no good just saying that at a high level. Academics need access to, well, what's the concrete embodiment of that needs some work on?
In a timely manner as well.
Yes, in 3 months.
Yeah, yes.
And actually, sometimes there are other mechanisms that we don't always need. Yes, we need big projects. So please, UKRI, we need big funding. Absolutely. But also, sometimes we need mechanisms just to say, academic, can you work on this thing for the next 3 months? You don't need you don't need a lot of other people. We want you to think about this. What can we do to help you have that time at the university? Is it 50K to get some other, you know, assistance, etc.? Let's explore these mechanisms about allowing academics to actually be academic researchers and not just always having to be responding to big funding calls.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks. In terms of the sort of communication side and the classified versus unclassified, with my sort of GCHQ hat on, NCSC in particular do a really great job of sort of publishing their problem books in an unclassified way. From an academic perspective, panel members, you know, do you find that works? Do you have enough information? Because, you know, it can be really difficult to take a problem which is absolutely classified and still make it relevant when you've declassified it. And like I say, I think NCSE do a really good job of this, but they are part of, a much bigger system. So Adam,
Shall
you look like you really
shall
want
I
to come
answer
in.
this, Muffy? Because we've been in a meeting where I'm the cheerleader for problem books because I find them so useful, and my PhD students use them to think about research ideas. The challenge is it's a lot of work to put out a problem book.
Right.
So in part, I think one of the jobs of researchers and academics is to tell people that we find them really valuable, or at least I find them really valuable, and I'll ask the others if that's the case. But because it is a lot of effort, they need to be updated, they need to be live documents rather than just something pushed out. But I'm a bit of a fan of problem books.
Cool. Yeah.
Could I say, we did call it Bletchley 2.0 to indicate there is actually the potential for a physical place that people can come together and actually talk about it, rather than just have to read the playbook. They can actually go and have the live discussions about the problems.
So actually bring people together.
Yeah, and that's the great thing, the difference between now and 1939. Yes, we can do lots of things in person, and there's nothing like Exhibit A that replaces that, except we can do so much online as well. We do so much virtual collaboration, etc. We have a much better working environment for research problems for that reason.
Which is good. Yeah. Brilliant. Shahid, do you want to go in?
I totally agree with this, and this is exactly what happened in Sweden as well. 3 years ago, when we joined NATO, and not being in defense for so long, there was a real, hesitation towards defense research. So how we try to solve this? I, together with a university and Swedish Armed Forces, we went to the government and we say, we need to establish a physical place where, it's a central neutral place where it's not a legal entity, so we don't compete with something else, like, in this case, a Turing Institute or University of Glasgow itself. It's an independent physical place, but it's not a legal entity. So we ended up establishing something called Cyber Campus. Government put 100 million directly into the campus. I'm the co-founder of the campus. Since before joining University of Glasgow, I was the research director of the campus, and the idea was very similar. We have great minds who are in universities. Universities have limitations. They have students, they have open spaces, they work now on responsible internationalization, but still you can't limit, a university office that you're not allowed to go there. So we ended up establishing this cyber campus. It's a physical building in Stockholm, in the center. Most universities are part of that, where I used to share 20% of my time with Cyber Campus, and so does other professors as well. You hire people, but you have an expert who guide them. You sit there once a week, on average, and the idea was that you need to educate, research, and innovate on cyber defense. But as I said before, it's a blurred line. It very well be used for cybersecurity and industry and other actors as well. So I completely agree with what you said, Muffy. We must have, you call it Bletchley 2.0 or Cyber Campus North or Cyber Campus UK, whatever a good name for it. But there must be a physical place where you need to bring together all these people who are willing to do cyber research. And on the other side, defense is also willing to work with those people because they need those special skill sets, rather than, labeling universities as strategically aligned partners and everyone. So it's a bit tricky. You need to recruit students, you need to be international, and there are quite a few limitations where you can't, align your operations directly. We are independent, not aligned partners in universities. But in cyber campus context in Sweden, no one objected that you do defense research, though it's the same mechanism, same people who are in university ended up doing research there. They are, and the good thing, we invested heavily on the infrastructure that's shared. No one owns it, but everyone owns it. If you establish an infrastructure in Glasgow, it's great, but still, we have some sort of ownership for this. You have to come to us and, us. But if we set up Bletchley 2.0 physical place, have an infrastructure that's shared among top people that we want to work with on defense and security research, that kind of setup, I think, in the UK would also work very well under current situation where we have now dedicated funding as well to think about how to use this bucket too for national security and defense, where you don't want to give money in a small chunks. So as Ian said, big and strategic things. We shouldn't think about defense and security research and the project-based research. You get the money for like a year. No, we must have a long-term strategic partnership with defense. And that's how it would work, I have my day job in University of Glasgow, but I would love to share a day with that campus as well, and so others. So that's how I would put this Bletchley 2.0.
Okay, thanks. So heads up, Kathryn, UKRI might be, there might be a Bletchley 2.0, £100 million call soon. Shahid, I'm going to stick with you if that's all right. Anthony Finkelstein, who was a previous chief scientific advisor, now a vice chancellor of a university, he wrote a call to arms blog to universities on this topic of how they invest, how they partner, and how they lead in defense and security research. What's your view on how academia should respond? Is it this sort of Bletchley 2.0, the cyber campus that Stockholm have? Is that how you think we should be responding?
I think it's primarily along these lines I would answer myself. It's, again, I would say it's true that we are in a period where defense and security is being reshaped by these rapid changes in society. So university cannot say, this is none of my business. We can stay at the margin, So we need to be part of this. We need to contribute in this. So, again, I'll emphasize that it's not like if we should do that, but how we should do that. And Cyber Campus is one mechanism, or Bletchley. Without being considered as allied defense partner, we can still contribute what exactly needed, for national security and defense under different setups. And understanding each other. As I said, defense must understand how universities work or their limitations. At the same time, now universities should not think like 20 years ago. They should see the need what we have after 2022, what's happening. I mean, in this article, there are a few things which are a bit blurred. For example, there are things like we should help our partners and sport and so on. So it gets a bit tricky under current circumstances when go to university and ask students that, we need to build defense for someone else, and how my defense innovation would be used in a specific way. That makes things a bit tricky when you are declared as an allied partner. But under the hood, if you have this setup where you have a national lead, you can go for it.
Do you think that's true even for cyber defense?
Yeah, that's absolutely true for cyber defense as well. As I said, I was in the cyber campus context, we work with Saab, for example, and they said to me, we have this radar and wireless systems that we spend trillions, millions in Swedish crown to spend, but now we ended up using 5G because that's much cheaper. It's a civilian technology, and it's much easier to get a university graduate now who understand this telecom much better than what we would train on our proprietary technologies. So military, again, this rapid growth in these technologies, military needs these civilian technologies. Okay. And we should continue working on civilian technologies under civilian umbrella in most cases, but of course the operational security part or national security part that could be done under cyber campus or specifics. There's still fundamental research that would work very well under a civilian setup.
Cool, thank you. Adam, I want to stick on technologies and emerging technologies. You've been looking at emerging technologies that may shape the future of cybersecurity research. What's the picture looking like so far, and how should we respond?
Okay, so I'll do some really brief background first, just to contextualize. So this has been part of the EPSRC's Crane Network Plus. So Crane is the cyber security research and networking environment, if I remember, and it's to bring together the cyber research ecosystem across the UK. And part of the reason, or one of the ways that we're doing it, is by doing technology trends tracking and looking at the cyber implications of that. So I wrote the brief in the application, and then realised that I had to do it, which was slightly traumatizing because we didn't have anyone else to help out. So it started with desk research. So me and a couple of PhDs and a couple of colleagues from Crane, we went through IEEE, we went through Deloitte, Gartner, World Economic Forum, virtually any kind of technology trends. And from that, we got over 60 emerging and future technologies that are going to fundamentally change lots of the ways that we live our lives in the next 10 years. So, as you might expect, lots of AI, lots of robotics, lots of automation, driverless cars and so on, lots of quantum and data, lots of biotechnology, organoid intelligence, so computational biological organisms, computer in a petri dish, neurotechnology, which we're starting to see now, chips in brains, both for accessibility purposes, but also to enhance people's senses in different ways. Lots of really interesting materials development, everything from smart dust through to compounds and optoelectronics and so on. Lots of really interesting space technology, interspecies AI communication, where Dr. Dolittle becomes quite plausible because you can suddenly understand what your cat is saying, which is probably to do with food. Grief bots, all sorts of things like this. So we had this big list of technology, and then we ran a couple of rounds of Delphis where we got people to rank these technologies by should we really care about them from a cybersecurity perspective. And then we took the top ranked ones and we asked the same people to then go back and say, how likely is it it's going to be exploited by an adversary, and how much need is there for cybersecurity research in order to actually secure this technology, because you can imagine, how do you secure a petri dish? It's something that fundamentally we're not set to do. Then we had a couple of deep dive workshops with experts, one focused on AI and one focused on robotics and automation. So it won't surprise you that, and I've got a list here, so I made the mistake of doing the tiniest notebook imaginable, which isn't helpful. But so we have a matrix of what the big risks are. Agentic and Gen AI, not surprisingly, quantum, digital twins, but especially digital twins to do with humans, obviously autonomous vehicles, autonomous drones and so on, but also some things that we hadn't really thought about that much. So point of care medicine, so medicines being fabricated on demand in remote locations, for example, will need unique ways to be secured. Engineering biology, and particularly synthetic life and securing synthetic life in some form or other. Brain-computer interfaces are going to be a really key area. And digital ID voting, and something that we've seen even just recently is personalized AI companions. And then when it came to the workshops, we took notes and we sent it off to Abertay University for thematic analysis. And there's a few really key things that I think came out across both the AI and robotics. One is that we're in the midst of probably the biggest technological disruption for at least 30 years, maybe longer. And we're just at the start of it. And one of the key things that's come out from lots of the sessions here at CyberUK is that stuff is moving incredibly quickly in the AI field. And I think we're right at the start of this. And I think when you look at where robotics is going, where you look at where automation is going, we are really just at the start of this tsunami of technological disruption that's going to be hitting us as a community. And we're going to face a world where threats are going to be AI driven, they're going to be adaptive, they're going to be emergent, because the technology that we're using is not only going to be kind of embedded in our social environment, but it may well be embedded in us as humans, which opens up a whole range of challenges that are often deeply socio-technical as well as technical, because the governance, regulation, accountability issues are lagging the technology by a significant amount. So in terms of what do we do about it, one, we have to recognize that the boundaries between technology and humans are blurring. Technology is becoming more socially embedded. It's becoming cuter in some ways. If you look at robots, then suddenly you have a kind of surveillance technology in your home that your kids are talking to that's incredibly cute, that needs to be secured in some way. So we need to move from just technical to acknowledging the socio-technical needs when it comes to securing these technologies. We need to move from thinking about securing components to securing systems, and take a much wider approach to understanding what these emergent threats are. And we need to step ahead of them. You know, when we bring people into these workshops especially from robotics and bioengineering, rarely is security considered. So we talk a lot about security by design, but you know, in most of these emerging technological fields, security is added on at the end, like it was, you know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and still is to a degree in computing. And I think that's what we really need to do. Yes, we need to brigade resources in terms of Muffy's view about Bletchley 2.0, but we also need to get ahead of what these emerging technologies are going to be.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. Kathryn, there's a lot there from an emerging tech perspective that we've heard from Adam there. What's the role of UKRI in this? You know, you fund an awful lot of the research that's done in the UK. How are you responding within UKRI to support the sort of national security and defence, but cybersecurity in particular?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the challenges that Adam has just outlined and those fears that Adam has outlined are actually ones that we are very aware of. I think what the changes that our new CEO, so Ian Chapman came in last year as our CEO and has made some changes that I think actually will help us address those better than we would have done previously. But we're only at the start of that journey, so let's see how we go. I think just to outline what some of those changes were. Really, Ian came in and simplified our mission for us completely. So we've got a much simpler mission now as UKRI. So advancing knowledge, improving lives and driving growth, as simple as that. And the big change for us is that he's aligned our funding, the funding that UKRI spends and we divide amongst ourselves, amongst the councils, is aligned to that mission. What he's done in doing that is really the improving lives and driving growth elements. So improving lives is really all about addressing government's agenda. So finding those priority areas for government, where do we really need to shift the dial and show government partners that actually research is relevant and meets the needs. But then also, of course, the driving growth element is how do you grow successful businesses from our technological developments and then result in economic growth. In those two areas, Ian's taken those together and has really said, okay, we're going to focus on the industrial strategy subsectors, and those are we're going to set up a series of programs that address those industrial strategy subsectors. So the one that there's a program that I'm now heading up, so now a program for national security and defence within they're all across UKRI. We have another program being established in advanced connectivity technology, semiconductors and cybersecurity, all together in one program. AI stands up now as a formal program, quantum technologies also as a formal program, as well as, of course, those into life sciences and other areas of the industrial strategy. These programs really are, I suppose, the license to operate in a different way, and that's what we're looking to do. First of all, partnering very, very closely with government. So actually, building and co-creating with government so that we are investing towards to a plan that really calls out government priorities and addresses those head on. So focuses funding where government needs it most. But then also really trying to align the research funding with innovation funding, the funding that Innovate UK would usually spend, putting those together. So really you've got a route to pull through from research through to translation and commercialization, really helping technologies to become scalable businesses. And I think what this does for us as UKRI is really enables us to, first of all, I think, align amongst those IS8 areas, align amongst those technologies. So actually that they should be working, yes, they're individual programs, but they need to be working together. They need to be cognizant of what each other's doing, the challenges that each are facing, so that actually AI is aware of some of the security challenges that need to be embedded from the start. Quantum is thinking about that. That each of those programs also thinks about that, and that actually we're getting more bang from our buck in a way across all these programs. That is one ambition of Ian, that we align across those programs. We share our are challenges, and we work together to address those and embed the thinking that we need in each of those areas. But then also reach back into the core research of the council so that we're educating and influencing, I suppose, our wider research communities, or the research that's happening more through our baseline funding, to say, actually, so that this is how your research contributes to this agenda. These are challenges we're facing. This is how that research can be applied. Then, of course, aligning to government priorities, really showing how research can shift the dial on those, aligning with the research and innovation and translation, but also, I think, giving us potentially a really different way of doing things. So actually, are we talking about three-year programs, three-year projects being set up anymore? I don't think we are. I think we're moving away from that. And what's the space then to move, be much more agile, much more flexible, pull researchers in and out of these areas. But then, as I think that education piece and really ensuring people understand actually what does it mean for my piece of energy research or my piece of AI, and actually the fact that we need security built in from the start.
Yeah. Getting it built in from the start, so it's not an add-in, like you've both been saying, Kathryn and Adam, it's so important. We must get that into our research. And I think UKRI are really well placed to help us with that. Yeah. I'm conscious of time, we've got 10 minutes, and I want to go to questions from the audience as well. But Muffy, I just want to come back to you. You had the 6-point provocation, the Bletchley 2.0. We can't wait for £100 million building, which UKRI are going to give us the money for. How do we get ahead? How do we get this pace? Because you've all talked about pace.
Right. So I want to go back to some
Microphone.
Yeah, a national... Right. Thank you. Back to some basics. There's a national threat. We need a national response. That's the first thing. Let's recognize we need to do something together. Yeah, we don't need a new... Yes, we need a new shiny building. We don't need to wait for it. And it's not just about the building, and we do have the NCSC, we do have lots of buildings. The point is, we need to make the time to go there together to talk about the problems, to identify what needs to be worked on. And it's so good to hear about future tech, but I just want to remind everybody about the problems we have now. And the fact that I heard there was a brilliant panel earlier today, and Eleanor Fairfold, apologies if I get her name wrong, from MOD, was talking about something like 85% of vulnerabilities come from points in the supply chain. It's not in the major places, right? And the next problem is going to be tucked away in this obscure place that you haven't thought of yet. As she said, we need to be tackling those problems. As she said, eat your greens before your ice cream. Now, she was quoting someone else, but I can't remember. So the future tech is the ice cream. We need to get that right, but we also need to be eating our greens. Did that answer your question?
It started to. Thanks, Muffy. Thank you. All right, thank you very much, everyone. We've got some really great questions, and less than 10 minutes now to get through them. So thank you very much for your questions. The one that's got the most thumbs up so far: how do we change cybersecurity from a standalone discipline into secure by design core curriculum within engineering and science undergraduate programs? Who wants to take that?
Well, we do have a professor of cybersecurity here, so he should start this off, I think.
No, but that's true, actually. Not even bachelor's program, but starting from schools, So cybersecurity, I was in a panel yesterday, an ecosystem panel, and the company I worked with now, PQ Shield, the CEO of the company put it very rightly that cybersecurity should itself be considered as critical infrastructure and not it's part of something else. He was a bit unhappy with the cybersecurity should be built into X, Y, Z. It should be rather considered as itself a critical infrastructure. Where, for example, starting from people. So I personally had a PhD position for a specific topic, quantum. It's absolutely no way to find a good candidate. So yes, definitely we should start from our high schools. A cybersecurity curriculum, both male and especially women, or girls. They should be educated on the cyber. And then in the university, there are lots of programs. I mean, still, and we are not short of programs. But honestly, when we were starting program at Glasgow last year, we look at some programs. We are teaching what was, created 10 years ago.
Yes, yeah, I think
there's no way up to date.
Yeah, as
Very
academics,
few
we need to
universities now
change.
teach like agentic AI and cybersecurity and so on. This is in research, and there are some cool projects, But if you look at our programs and what we are producing, it's lagging behind. So I completely agree with this question, but how we should do it, we should definitely revisit our programs.
Cool, thanks Shahid. Adam.
So we have some mechanisms within UKRI and elsewhere to embed some of these principles into other projects. So we have responsible research and innovation, which has the idea about anticipation and responsibility, and security should really be part of that. So it's often not stressed, but any big funded project should take responsible research and innovation into account. And so perhaps, and those of us who are academics know that we have to navigate trusted research as a kind of challenge when it comes to research funding or anything else. And so, the way to get secure by design into non-cyber environments is to make it a requirement of the funding mechanisms, because that's what motivates academics, is they follow the money. And if they have to do it, then they will.
Yes. This was specifically about undergrad programs as well, but making sure that, we don't have this standalone sort of cybersecurity. It has to be secure by design, and we get it in at undergrad, so that by the time, we're doing our research, we got our PhDs, it's much more embedded in it as well. Sorry, Muffy, you want to come in?
No, I think there's some basic things we could be doing, like, why are we teaching programming languages without good type systems? Why are we giving people the tools to build vulnerable systems? In some sense, we've regressed, I think, in terms of programming. And I know software isn't the only aspect, but why do we continue to give people programming environments where you can have these problems? You can have type problems, you can have dangling pointers, you can have, all these classical things. Why are we giving them those tools?
But that's down to us, I guess, isn't it, as academics to be teaching them better.
Bring back algal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Shorter answers if we can, just because we've only got 4 minutes, but I really like this one. I applaud the desire. Oh, it's gone. Oh.
I'll bring it back.
Right, okay, I applaud the desire to move quicker, but isn't the slower pace of your work a key benefit to us? It produces deep and thorough thinking that may be absent in our modern, hyper-distracted, shallow thinking world. How do you navigate that conflict? That's a great question. If you could answer it like really short as well.
Superb question. So the urgency is to come together to hear what the problems are, and then, yes, give us some time and peace to think about them. But let's make sure we are spending our long thoughts on things that really matter.
Great.
I would say that all too often there is kind of deep and long but quite shallow thinking that goes on. And actually, we do need the foundational work, but if we're going to do foundational, it has to be pitched as foundational, and it has to be, you have to accept it's going to be risky, it's going to be long, it's going to be slow, there may not be the outcome. And actually, the way that we have to do everything now is to almost pre-promise what we're going to find, and we are pushed and motivated. So skip the slow, shallow, and actually support the deeper stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. Kathryn.
So I think you've hit the point that I was going to make there is very similar. Is I think some of this is about understanding what foundational research do you need to feed from. That's where your depth has to lie. That's where you need that's where you build up your core capability that then you pull through into very rapid, agile responses of greater deployment. And I think that's where Dan, it's us working very closely with your teams, for example, with Tim DeFore's teams to work out actually what are the basic capabilities that we need our communities to have, allow them the time to go into that depth, and then you can pull that through into application.
Brilliant, thank you.
I just want to add one point here as well. The foundational research today, most of it ends up in valley of death. You produced a great paper, great, and that's stop. So the link between the second TRL level, second or third, that most fundamental research reaches, and then going from 2 to 7 or 5, is somehow missing. You know, where you, so I think the UKRI new programs where you have this curiosity-driven research, it should be directly feed into or linked with the bucket 2, what we call, where you have national security. So yes, we should do fundamental research that stops at TRL 1, 2, 3, and then you must have a mechanism to take it further and not see that you published a great paper, you know, and 90% of your work is now in the valley of death, no one cares, you know, but that link must be established in the new programs as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, one last call to action very, very quickly. I feel like we've been talking about this for a number of years. What one action could industry take away to support academia on this topic? One action.
Articulate the problem they would most, the research challenge they would most like solved in the next year.
Great.
I think engage more actively with researchers. You know, so you know, come along to the Crane All Hands in June. So I'm getting my advert in,
Well done,
where you can meet the security ecosystem within the UK. So actively engage and give us the problems.
And that's where they can explain
Yeah.
the research challenge.
Brilliant, thank you. That feels like a nice one to end on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Thank you very much to the panel, to Muffy, Adam, Kathryn, and Shahid. Great, great conversation. Thank you very much.